It's now 7 p.m., which means that the Oscars are underway, and that means for me, it is time to make a movie. This is now the 4th year that I'm participating in Joel Haver's Shoot a Movie During the Oscars challenge, although for this year, I'm not really making a movie. I'm kind of more just making like a long YouTube video instead, and I hope that is okay. He seems to be very open about, what people make. What I was thinking about leading up to this day is that I don't really think of myself as a filmmaker, even though I have made movies for this challenge. I don't actually want to be a filmmaker, at least not at this time in my life, And so this is what I'm choosing to do for this year. I'm just going to kind of show you my movie collection. What inspired me to do this was actually Peanut Butter Gamer, PBG, which maybe some of you will know him. He's kind of like he's kind of a legend on YouTube. He's not as popular as he used to be, but he made a video where he was just kind of showing off his entire video game collection. And I love that kind of stuff, I loved watching that. It's the kind of video that you can just keep on in the background, or, while you're going to sleep or something like that. I know that's often what I use those kinds of videos for. And that's all this is really meant to be, honestly. But yeah, this is my movie collection. I'm going to try to give you, maybe I brought my old phone here to, get a video footage of I have, a whole pile of movies here. Some bunch of movies, and it goes into the back there. It's also kind of a junk drawer. I have a bunch of old controllers that don't work in here. But yeah, that's the intention, is just to show you my movies. And I'm gonna probably, talk about them one at a time. I think some of them I'm probably, gonna struggle to really say anything meaningful about them. I know, some of them I just haven't seen in such a long time, and other ones I just don't like them as much as I used to. But there are definitely a bunch that I will have a lot to say about, and in fact, I'm probably gonna have to rein myself in just to keep the video moving. And the plan is to talk about them for a little bit, and I'm also gonna give them a rating. I'm gonna give them a rating of either 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10, because here on the Adam Rinaldi channel, everybody knows that there's just no such thing as bad movies. All movies are good movies. And I'm gonna start with this one. This is actually the kind of a funny story with this one, because this is the latest addition to my collection. It's a movie called Quiet. It's by a guy named Jim Ether, who I've been following since I was a kid. And this is actually a movie that I supported on Kickstarter back in 2012. And he's finally finished it just this year and sent it out, which is kind of funny. I had pretty much come to terms with the fact that it was probably not going to be finished, and there was no problem with that. I was not angry about it, but I'm glad he finally came through. I'm excited to see it, so I can't give it a rating because I haven't actually seen it yet. I only received it a few days ago, as I said. So, but that's Quiet by Jim Ether. Jim Ether is actually, it's a name that if you are my age, you might even recognize. He got his start on Newgrounds, just posting animations and music and stuff like that. And I've been following him ever since. The Descendants. This is one that, for some reason, I find it very comforting. It's. I think for a lot of people, maybe this is not the kind of movie you would want to watch twice, because it can be funny, but it's also very sad and very depressing. And but it's also very human, and I think that's what I really like about it, and that's why I keep coming back to it. I would give this movie 10 out of 10. The Glamorous Life of Sachiko Hanai. So this is a movie that this is part of the Japanese pink film sort of movement. They're sexploitation films, and this one in particular is so wild and is so funny. I think it's one of the better ones. To be honest, I've only seen maybe a dozen pink film movies. And they're hard to find. If you actually want a physical copy of them, they're hard to find. So I'm pretty happy I was able to find this one. I really love this movie. This is a 10 out of 10. I Love You, Man. I grew up watching I love Judd Apatow comedies, and this is one of the better ones, I would say, from that time. I've actually done a review of this movie on my channel. I'm just going to give it a 10 out of 10. It's a great movie. Anchorman, you know what? I think I don't like this movie as much as the rest of the world likes it. I love Will Ferrell. I'm more of like a Step Brothers guy. Anchorman is great though, you know. So many quotable moments, as you all know. And I was lucky enough to see this in theaters. Like that was a really fun experience. Seeing a movie like this in a full theater is a very special kind of experience. Anchorman, you know, I'll give it 10 out of 10. So this movie is called Tokyo Decadence. You know, unfortunately, I bought this not realizing that it's region locked. So I can't actually watch it, as I can't play it in my country. This one's extremely depressing and depraved, and at times hard to watch, but I tend to like stuff like that from time to time. And I would definitely give this a 10 out of 10. Shaun of the Dead. This is a great horror comedy. This is actually a movie that back in school my friend Leon showed this to me, and I think I ended up liking it more than he did. And I just, you know, I rewatched it this past year, and I would say it holds up. It's great. 10 out of 10. Mystery Team. Okay, so this is actually Donald Glover when he was still a YouTuber. You know, he had if you're not aware, he had a YouTube channel called Derek Comedy. It was like a sketch comedy channel, and they eventually got enough of a budget to make a movie. And you know, I would not say this is like I would say it's okay. It's not the best movie, but it does have a place in my heart. I really love this style of just like really silly, really childish humor. I definitely would not recommend it to everybody, but I really love it. I would give this a 9 out of 10. And we're getting into like, okay, so not another teen movie. This is also similar to Mystery Team. I don't know, I don't have guilty pleasures, but if I did, this would probably be in the guilty pleasure, you know, category. I will ride for this movie. I think it's an excellent comedy. Especially now, rewatching this now. I did rewatch this, like, I think over the pandemic, and to just revisit this time in history, man, this is just the kind of stuff I grew up with, and it just makes me so happy. I'm giving this a 10 out of 10. This is Jarhead. There's a time where I was like pretty much wanting to watch every single Jake Gyllenhaal movie because I had seen him in Donnie Darko, which we will get to. But at the time, I was just excited to see anything that he was in, and I was surprised by like how much I really liked this one. I typically do not like war movies, or like, you know, there are exceptions. And this one, you know, I would say what I liked about it is you're kind of just seeing what these soldiers go through on the off time, you know, when they're not in combat. You know, I think that's more interesting than, you know, seeing the drama and the violence and all that you see in most war movies. I'm going to give this one a 9 out of 10. This is a movie called Hard 8. Sometimes this goes by the name Sydney as well. It's a Paul Thomas Anderson movie. This is a very special movie to me because I was very young when I discovered this, and I think at this time in my life, I think I had already seen Magnolia, and that's what led me to this movie. But yeah, this movie, as well as a number of these, just kind of, they're very special to me because they kind of remind me of like the magical moment in life where I started to realize that movies were amazing. It kind of opened up a new world for me. I really love this movie. I think it's PTA's first. I think it's his first movie, and yeah, it's easily 10 out of 10. Okay, we're getting into some interesting territory. You'll see this one's a thin one. For a period of my life, I would go downtown to Chinatown here in Toronto, and I would pick up bootleg DVDs. And this is a movie by Takeshi Kitano called Sonatine. And this one I don't remember it very well, so I don't think I should give it a rating. You know, I wish I could talk more about it because I do like Takeshi Kitano movies. I feel like I would probably like this one. I don't think I can give it a rating, but yeah, Sonatine. This is another one from from Chinatown. This one's called Outrage. It's also a Takeshi Kitano movie. This is like more what he's known for. This is more of his like Yakuza movies. And this one also, I don't remember it super well, but I do remember it well enough to say that I did really enjoy it. I think I would still want to watch it again before really giving it a rating, but I'll just, from what I remember about it, I'm going to say this is a 9 out of 10. Okay, this movie is called The Science of Sleep. This one is, I think, a lesser, maybe not necessarily lesser known, but it's not as popular. This movie is directed by Michel Gondry, who did Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I think everybody knows him for that movie. This is one of his other ones that I think didn't get as much attention, but I still really like it. It was pretty important to me at one point in my life. I would watch it over and over again. Upon revisiting it, though, I don't like it as much. I think it's still pretty good. It's pretty imaginative. I guess I would give it a 9 out of 10. Okay, Syriana. This is it's a political thriller, which is not really my kind of movie. And I have to say, I've seen this movie, I don't know, like at least 5 times, and I still don't really know what happens in this movie. It is a very convoluted story. I think also, I was pretty young when I was watching this, and I think I really don't, I still to this day would say I'm not really politically inclined. I'm definitely a little more in tune with what's going on in our world now, but when I was watching this, I think a lot of it just went over my head. But I think that was why I kept watching it too, because I just was so determined to understand it. And I never did, but I did really enjoy my time with it. So I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. This one's called Forbidden Planet. It's a Leslie Nielsen movie. I actually did a review of this movie on this channel. It was one of my first reviews. And yeah, I like this one. I haven't seen it since I did that review, which is now like a couple years ago. But it's a really great, like, classic sci-fi. Very thoughtful movie. And if you want my full thoughts on it, you can watch my review. I don't really want to repeat myself about it, but I will give this a 10 out of 10. The Wedding Singer. This is, I think, probably Adam Sandler's best movie. Or not his best movie. Best of his classic run. If we're talking about like Happy Gilmore, Billy Madison, all the classic ones, I think this is the one that really stands the test of time. I mean, I think if it comes down to Adam Sandler movies, I prefer his dramatic roles overall. Like, I really like Punch Drunk Love, and I really like Uncut Gems, you know. But as far as this, just like a classic rom-com, this is an amazing movie. And it's even just like, as far as rom-com go, I think it's one of the greats. This is definitely a 10 out of 10. Dazed and Confused. You know, I've gone back and forth on this one. I think it's an excellent movie, but the way that it affects me emotionally is actually kind of difficult. I don't know if other people experience this, but this is, sometimes I watch movies about high school, and they just really make me very sad, because it makes me wish I could go back and you know, take more risks. This is definitely a movie about like really living it up in your youth, you know what I mean? And people are experiencing these like really important moments in life that you know, stick with you for the rest of your life. 10 out of 10. Okay, this is Werner Herzog. First Werner Herzog movie we're going in. We're talking about Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans. This is a friggin' crazy one. It's an odd one for Werner Herzog. It's one of his American ones, and I don't think is particularly well received. This is one that maybe I would like to talk about on this channel eventually, maybe do a review on, because I do have a lot I could say about this one. But for now, I'm just going to say this one for me is a 10 out of 10. This one is called The Dreamers. This is also one I have not seen in a very long time. I do remember really liking it, though. This is a movie about people who love cinema, really, and art, and a lot of the conversations in the movie are about art. And it's an erotic movie as well. They're all like in love with each other. Again, though, I mean, I'm kind of just speaking from very distant memories. I'm gonna give it a 10 out of 10. Ed Wood. Yeah, I think this is, you know, at least for Tim Burton, I think for me, this is a lot more my taste in comparison to the other stuff that he makes. This is his foray into more dramatic material, and it's a biopic, really, about Ed Wood. And if you don't know Ed Wood, he's an American filmmaker. often considered one of the making some of the worst movies ever made. This is more about the man himself than it is about his movies, and yeah, it's an amazing look at an very fascinating life. I would give this a 10 out of 10. Scanner Darkly. This is yet another Richard Linklater movie. This is a great druggy movie, but also watching it sober is even better, I would say. Very interesting sci-fi. It's written by Philip K. Dick, and it's all rotoscoped. It looks amazing. Just like the name would suggest, it is kind of dark, but if you're into that kind of stuff, it's a great one. This is 10 out of 10. Spun, another drug-fueled movie starring Jason Schwartzman and Brittany Murphy. Yeah, I'm giving this 10 out of 10. Okay, Naked Lunch by David Cronenberg. Guy gets addicted to bug powder, and things just go kind of crazy from there. Definitely 10 out of 10 for me, and it's not even my favorite David Cronenberg movie. Logan's Run. This one I bought because I had heard it is a classic sci-fi that everybody should see. Sort of like a cult classic movie. Very low budget sci-fi. A really interesting premise, you know. It's one where the whole idea is that everybody is supposed to die at 30 years old, and they have this like ritual death for people. Logan is someone who has decided to rebel against that. He says, I don't want to die at 30, and he runs away. It's definitely a pretty thoughtful movie, but I would say, you know, honestly, I didn't like it that much. I have a real appreciation for it, for like what it is. A lot of it is like shot in a mall, and they kind of dressed it up. Like it's really a cool piece of history, I think. But in terms of like how much I would give it a 9 out of 10. Okay, this one's called Meeting People is Easy. This is actually a documentary. This is a movie that follows Radiohead basically on a tour. They were touring for OK Computer. Something that's really interesting about this is that you get a look at like the touring life for this band and just how miserable they were. And I find that to be very interesting. And it's particularly Tom York, who's already a kind of, you know, temperamental kind of artist for what it is. And he's also getting the brunt of it, you know, because he is the front man. But basically, you see them, going through endless amounts of interviews and photo shoots and after parties. And he's just like, he's falling apart. He hates it, you know what I'm saying? And so it's just interesting to see that side of things. You know, usually you don't see that kind of stuff in documentaries. It's very artful in the way it's presented, so I really like that about it. And it's also got some of the best live performance footage that I've ever seen of this band. And even like, there's like, you know, sometimes they're just playing music during their downtime, and you get to see some of that. And this is a 10 out of 10. This movie's called 13. This was a pretty controversial movie, or I don't know if it was controversial when it came out, but it's certainly more controversial now, because I know that Evan Rachel Wood in this movie, I think she was 13. And if you know anything about this movie and the kind of things that they made her do in this movie at that age, you should not have a child acting in this role at all. I don't think you could get away with this today. But it was a cultural moment when this came out, and I remember really enjoying it. Again, this is one I have not seen in a long time. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Ichi the Killer, great Japanese crazy film, and I really enjoy it. I'm giving it a 10 out of 10. Ringu. This is obviously the Japanese movie that inspired The Ring, that was popular here in America. I remember watching this once when I bought it, and never again. I feel like I can't really rate it, but to be honest, I'm not a huge fan. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Okay, this is a movie called Songs from the Second Floor. This was a movie that I rented on a whim, and was blown away. This is a Roy Andersson movie. It's a Swedish movie. It's a Swedish movie. It's a European movie, and very, very artful. It's very slow paced, very funny, and tragic. And you know, this is actually one that I picked up. The video store that I rented this from was closing down, so they were selling their inventory.
and I saw this one. I had rented it, and like I think I had rented this at least a couple times, and then I went back there and bought it for cheap because they were getting rid of it. Really feel lucky to have a copy of this. This is definitely, I'm going to give this 11 out of 10, honestly. Taxi Driver. For Martin Scorsese, I think this is one of his strongest movies. I'm actually someone who has some mixed feelings about Martin Scorsese. I think he's an incredible filmmaker, but just for me personally, sometimes I think his movies are just a little too fast-paced for my liking. Like a movie like Goodfellas, I think moves way too quick, and when I watch that movie, I'm trying to understand it, but I can't process it that quick. I think I just have like kind of a slower brain, I guess. But Taxi Driver is one where I think he really got it right. The pacing in this is perfect. The story is just it's so heartbreaking and moving and shocking, you know. I actually rewatched this kind of recently, and I love it just as much as I did when I first saw it. Also, the soundtrack is incredible. This is definitely 10 out of 10. Okay, so this is actually another recent addition to this collection. This is actually a trilogy of movies. This is the Whit Stillman Doomed Bourgeois in Love trilogy. I just did, on this channel, I just did a review of one of the movies here. I did a review of The Last Days of Disco, which you could go watch if you'd like. I was actually just going to buy one of these movies called Barcelona, this one. And I remember going on Amazon and looking it up, and it was like something like $45 or something. And that's often typical for Criterion releases, right? So I was like, okay, it's not really worth it. But then it suggested me to just buy all three, and all three of them together was $70. So I just went for it, you know? This is 11 out of 10. The Assassination of Jesse James by the Coward Robert Ford. This was the first Western that I actually connected with. It's got some great performances by Brad Pitt and Casey Affleck. It's also a very long one. It's very drawn out and a lot of tension. You know something bad is going to happen, and you're just kind of waiting for it. In fact, you kind of know what's going to happen because the movie is called The Assassination of Jesse James. He's going to get killed in this movie, you know. I think it's just like a great exploration of obsession. You know, sometimes you just become so enamored with a person that eventually you end up just hating them. And that's kind of what this movie is all about. And I would give it a 10 out of 10. Alien, classic movie. Honestly, for me, it's okay. I'll give it a 9 out of 10. Truman Show, excellent movie. One of the greatest of all time. It's also one that I watched a lot growing up. I haven't seen it in a long time, but I would still give this 10 out of 10. The Big Lebowski. I think The Big Lebowski, you know, whenever I watch this, I always feel like I'm supposed to like it more than I actually do like it. It is a great movie. I do enjoy it. But just the way that people talk about this movie, I always feel like I'm supposed to really love this movie. But for me, this is not even like, you know, top 3 Coen Brothers movies that I've seen, you know. I think I like their more dramatic movies, I guess, you know, and we'll get, I have some more Coen Brothers movies we'll get to if we have time. But for now, I think I'll be generous. I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. Boiler Room. This is a movie that, when I was growing up, this movie played on TV like twice a day. Although I never really saw it on TV, that's how I became aware of it. And then when I finally watched it, I actually really fell in love with it. It is kind of like one of these like corrupt stockbroker kind of movies, similar to like Wall Street or The Wolf of Wall Street, like that kind of stuff. But it's got its own style, you know. And this is also the movie that I discovered Giovanni Ribisi, and I really like him. I think he's a somewhat underrated actor. I would give this 9 out of 10. Punch Drunk Love, excellent Paul Thomas Anderson movie. Absolutely beautiful performance from Adam Sandler in this one. And unforgettable story too. It's such an oddball love story. I actually lent this to, I had a copy of this that I lent to a friend and he lost it. And it wasn't really his fault. His backpack got stolen. I cannot, blame him for any of that. But I love the movie so much that I just decided to go and buy myself a second copy. The last time I watched this, it was just as moving as the first time I watched it. This is a freaking 11 out of 10. Okay, this movie is called Go. It is, what's his name? Doug Liman? Yeah, Doug Liman. This is a movie that my friend Ethan lent to me, and I still have to get it back to him. He lent it to me maybe like a year ago, because we were talking about Doug Liman, and I had just recently seen the movie Swingers for the first time. So he lent me this movie to follow that up. It's just a lot of fun, It didn't really affect me as much as I thought it would, based on my friend Ethan's recommendation. He's someone who's very passionate about film. I would say half of this movie I really liked. The other half I could do without. It kind of follows like 4 different stories, in a way, that all happen within the same night. But anyway, for me, probably 9 out of 10. Xbox 360 copy of L.A. Noire. Excellent video game, 10 out of 10. This is Walk Hard. Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story. One of the greatest music comedies of all time. I feel like I've worn this out. By the amount of times I've watched it, I feel like I've worn it out. But I would still say this is an incredible comedy, especially if you know your music history, if you know your American music history. Yeah, this is definitely 10 out of 10. What do we got here? Cedar Rapids. Okay, Cedar Rapids is I think maybe an underrated gem. I don't know what people think of this movie necessarily. I just get the impression that it's sort of been overlooked. Like, if you watch a comedy and you think a little too hard about it, you will start to notice that even though it's very funny, it's also like extremely dark and depressing under the surface. And with this movie, it's dark and depressing, and that's not under the surface. It's pretty much in your face that it is dark and depressing. It is still very funny, but I do think the fact that they're not really trying to hide the sadness in this movie could be the reason why it doesn't work for some people. But for me, I really like it. I'll give it a 9 out of 10. Asteroid City. I really like this movie, but from what I understand, a lot of people were kind of disappointed because Wes Anderson has been taking, a direction towards more stylistic filmmaking and less emotional storytelling. Although I would disagree. I mean, it is obviously a lot more stylistic than a lot of his earlier work, but I would say the emotional storytelling is very much still there. And I really love this one. I mean, obviously, I bought it, so I really love it. And actually, watching it a second time made me like it even more, because my only real criticism with this one is that everybody talks way too fast, okay? And so the second time I watched it with subtitles on, and that made a world of difference. I actually know what happens in this movie now, and I'm giving this a 10 out of 10. Okay, Fitzcarraldo. Another Werner Herzog movie. This one is not actually, I know this is the favorite, or not exactly the favorite, I should say, but it is, I think, the movie that often people think of when they think of Werner Herzog. They think of Fitzcarraldo. The scope of this thing is incredibly impressive, and it really is a spectacle to behold. However, I would say it's not even close to my favorite Werner Herzog movies. I've seen it a couple of times, and frankly, I don't think I need to see it again. It's a 9 out of 10 for me. Broken Flowers. This is a movie that actually an ex-girlfriend gave to me back in high school because she was working at a movie theater, and she knew that I was a fan of Bill Murray. So she was just like, here, you can take this. Because she would get free movies from her workplace. They would just give free movies sometimes. And little did I know that I was inheriting one of the best Jim Jarmusch movies out there, or at least I think so. And I feel very lucky to have been introduced to Jim Jarmusch in that way. I think this one, it was just a great introduction to his style. It's a certain point in his career. I think this is probably one of his most accessible movies, which also means it's a great place to start. His other movies
They can be pretty slow, you know, depending on the kind of person you are. I mean, this one is pretty slow and subtle too, but it's still like engaging enough. It's funny in a way that I think would be more accessible to all kinds of audiences. But, you know, anyway, I'm going to say 11 out of 10. Kicking and Screaming by Noah Baumbach. I actually did a review of this movie on my channel, so I'm not going to, you know, repeat myself. I'm just going to give this a straight up 11 out of 10. Excellent movie. Dead Ringers. Okay, we were just talking about David Cronenberg when we were talking about Naked Lunch. I think this is my favorite David Cronenberg movie. Very disturbing. Kind of like these twins who, they're both gynecologists, and they sort of take advantage of women by pretending to be each other, and throughout a lot of this movie. It's a really sick and twisted movie. And actually, it's often considered one of the greatest Canadian movies ever made. I did see a list on Wikipedia listing the greatest Canadian movies ever made, and this one kind of is always on the list. And I agree. I think it's one of the best Canadian movies, definitely one of the best Cronenberg movies. 11 out of 10 for this one. Okay, so we were just talking about Doug Liman with Go over here. Swingers. Swingers is also a movie that I friggin' did a review on. So again, I don't want to repeat myself. I love this movie. Let's give it a 12 out of 10. Happy Gilmore, another Adam Sandler movie. This is one that was so close to my heart as a kid. You know, I friggin' watched this movie so many times, and to this day, I would say it still holds up. It's not as fun for me now as it was for when I was a kid, but I still have a special place in my heart for it. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Moneyball, I remember liking this movie a lot when it came out, and so I actually decided to buy it recently. But now rewatching it after I bought it, I really don't like it as much as I used to. It's still a very creative baseball movie. There aren't any other baseball movies like this one. I think that's what I like about it. And there is also like a family side story to it that is very touching. But overall, I didn't like it as much, so I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Natural Born Killers, kind of similar to Moneyball in that when I watched this as a kid, absolutely loved this. It's such a trippy movie. It is extremely creative as well, and it's fun. From what I understand, Tarantino actually wrote this, but he hates this movie because he thinks they completely butchered his screenplay, I guess. And it is considered to be one of the worst movies ever made, but at the same time, it's got a very strong cult following of people who absolutely love it. And I would say I used to be in that camp of people who just really loved this movie. But again, I also recently rewatched it, and now I understand why Tarantino hates it so much. I think I see it from a different lens now that I'm a bit older, and I'm kind of torn between my younger self and my older self, or like I guess my current self, about my feelings about this movie, because I still really want to love it, and I still do really admire the creativity in this movie. But for now, I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. Moving on to Step Brothers, I think this is, for me, when it comes to Will Ferrell movies, John C. Reilly movies, this duo, I think I'm definitely not alone in this either. I think this is their best work, and this is 11 out of 10. Amazing. Joker, okay, a lot of people have strong feelings about this movie. Some people really hate it. Some people really like it. I really like it. Obviously, I bought it. This is a great movie. There's kind of conversations going on about, you know, kind of movies like this. They're kind of like incel movies, whatever. American Psycho often gets put into that category as well. Things like that, but I don't really care. I think it's an awesome movie. 10 out of 10. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I think this movie, again, is one that I think I liked it a lot more when I was younger. I still have an appreciation for it, but I think a lot of that appreciation comes from nostalgia. And you know, it is genuinely funny as well. I watched it a lot as a comfort movie when I was growing up. And I think it helps that I never really read the book. Apparently, if you read the book and then you watch this, it's very disappointing. But I didn't have that experience. This is my introduction to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and I am happy that I had those experiences, but I feel like, unfortunately, the appeal has kind of run out.
But for now, yeah, I'll give it a 9 out of 10. All right, this movie's called Extract. This is a Mike Judge movie with Mila Kunis and Jason Bateman. This movie is awesome. I was really surprised by this movie. This is also another movie that a girlfriend gave to me. We watched it together. She had this at her place. I think her mom would always just buy a bunch of movies because they were cheap. Like this, obviously you can see $6.99. This was at a Blockbuster. Probably they're just getting rid of their stock. And anyway, we watched it together, and I loved it so much that she was like, "Just take it," you know. And so I did, and I still love this movie. And I would give this a 10 out of 10. Okay, Office Space. Classic. I grew up watching this movie, and I always loved it. But then I hadn't seen it in years. And then the pandemic happened, right? And I started working from home. And then a few months later, they also gave me a raise. And so I was in a position where I was doing less work than I had ever done before. And also making more money than I ever did before. And so it really reminded me of this movie. And I started watching this movie at that time. And I was like, I am living this movie right now. But I think, you probably all know Office Space. Amazing, wonderful comedy. Isn't this Mike Judge too? Yeah, this is Mike Judge as well. Excellent comedy. 10 out of 10. Small Soldiers. As a kid, this was everything I could have dreamed of. I actually rewatched this not too long ago as well, and it really holds up. Hot take, but Toy Story doesn't hold a candle to Small Soldiers. 10 out of 10. Magnolia, another Paul Thomas Anderson movie. It's a hard call, but I think this could be my favorite Paul Thomas Anderson's movies. I guess with this one, it's hard to know what to say about it because there's a lot going on in this movie. There's so many different characters and different stories happening at the same time. They're all just very similar in theme. You know what? I'm not going to say that much about it. I'm just going to give it a straight up, this is at least a 14 out of 10 for me. Wedding Crashers. It's a great comfort movie, I think. That's why I bought it. 9 out of 10. Superbad is one of the best comedies ever made, and I would give it a good 16 out of 10. Okay, now we're getting into the Coen Brothers movies that I actually really like. This is called A Serious Man. I think I like the religious sort of undertones to this whole thing. I used to be religious, so I think that's part of why this movie speaks to me so much. And I think also, I see a lot of myself in this character of Larry Gopnik. He's like a divorced guy, or he's going through a divorce. Things are kind of, touch and go at his workplace. A lot of things are just going wrong in his life, and yet he's taking it in stride. And he's not acting out at all. He's being a good guy, but he's also internally really struggling with it. And it's just, I think maybe that's just kind of the kind of person that I am. So that's why I like this movie so much. It also is very funny. It's a dark sense of humor, but I tend to like dark comedy, I guess. This one to me, 12 out of 10. Okay, The Beach Bum. Harmony Korine movie. This is actually my favorite Harmony Korine movie. I think that might be a bit of a hot take. I think most people, when they think of Harmony Korine, they think of Gummo or Spring Breakers. And I do love those movies as well. But I think when this movie came out, I was just so excited for it because if you know Harmony Korine, you know how much of a left turn this is from what he usually does. He's now kind of working with Hollywood people. I mean, it's not the first time he's working with Hollywood people, but in this movie you got Matthew McConaughey, Jonah Hill makes a cameo, Zac Efron is in it, Snoop Dogg, Martin Lawrence, Isla Fisher is in this as well. It's just wild that someone like Harmony Korine is now working with all these big names. And also just the fact that he was doing a comedy got me so excited to watch this. And when I watched it, it really did not disappoint. I think it's such a funny movie, and it's so creatively done. I love Harmony. This for me, this is at least a 17 out of 10. The Thing. Okay, classic horror movie. I like it. I don't know.
I guess for me, I don't have like strong feelings about it, but I enjoy it. I'll give it a 10 out of 10. Hot Fuzz. I think I already talked about Shaun of the Dead, right? I think I did. Yeah, so Hot Fuzz, I remember picking this up just on the strength of, Shaun of the Dead. I just was really eager to see this one. I prefer Shaun of the Dead, but I think this was an excellent way to follow that movie up. Kind of just the same, completely the same kind of writing, completely the same kind of sense of humor as well. I just think Shaun of the Dead is a cut above. But anyway, 10 out of 10. Rescue Dawn. This is another Werner Herzog American feature. This one was actually very well received. We talked about Bad Lieutenant, which I don't think people liked as much, but this one did get a lot of attention, and for good reason. It's just a movie about the sheer endurance of human beings in survival situations, and it's very effective in what it does, very emotional. 10 out of 10. Marie Antoinette. This is Sofia Coppola, I guess. It's a pretty good movie. I remember liking it when it came out. I had seen Lost in Translation, and that's why I became interested in Sofia Coppola's movies. And this one, I think it was the one that came out after Lost in Translation. So I was just eager to see it just based on like my trust in her filmmaking. And I remember really liking it. And I think it does have a very, interesting perspective on the story of Marie Antoinette. But overall, I think it is a mixed bag. I would say I have mixed feelings about it. 9 out of 10. We have the Ren and Stimpy Show uncut first and second season. I think I picked this up on a whim, and when I'm thinking about it right now, I would say like I don't really know like what's on here. I can think of specific episodes that I really like, and they have these great like commercial breaks that they make that I find very funny. But overall, I think I just picked this up because of its cultural relevance at the time. And I think overall, I just would say I have mixed feelings. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Wow. Okay, so we're kind of moving on. I think I'm going to change locations because honestly, sitting here cross-legged is a little bit difficult. So I'm just going to move over there. I'll be back in a second. Okay, let's continue, shall we? This is a movie called Everything Must Go. It is a Will Ferrell movie that I think I would have a hard time recommending this to people. But I certainly would say that it's got like something for me personally. It's about an alcoholic who, in the same day he loses his job, and he also comes home to see that his wife has left. She's locked the door to the house. She's changed the locks, and she's also left all of his belongings out on the front lawn, and he's just left to deal with that. This is a movie that I would say I have mixed feelings about, but there's also just some really beautiful moments and some really beautiful lines, and I personally just find it to be a comforting movie. But that being said, it probably would not be for everybody. I would give it a 9 out of 10. Matchstick Men. Pretty early on in life, this was a movie that like really blew me away when I first saw it. And I think as I've gotten older, it still is a very good movie, but it doesn't blow me away in the same way that it did originally. But it is a great like con man sort of movie. It's exciting in that way. There's a lot of twists and turns. I give it a 10 out of 10. The Weatherman, another Nicolas Cage movie. This is a pretty disturbing one, and actually I remember I watched this with my parents when I was pretty young, and if you know this movie, there's some stuff in here that is not exactly comfortable to be watching with your parents, especially my parents in particular are like, there's certain things we just don't talk about. Don't talk about sex. We don't talk about, we don't swear in our family. My family is kind of formal, I guess I would say. So watching this with my parents was kind of an uncomfortable experience, but I ended up really liking the movie. And I think seeing it at a young age, like you see this character, this weatherman, and he's at a point, he's kind of having a midlife crisis. And I think it kind of gave me an idea, or watching this kind of solidified some of my own ideas about how life works. And there's some really great lines in this. Like I remember one line where, I forget his name in the movie, but he's talking about how, when you're young, you there's just so many opportunities. You could really be anything, and then as you get older, the path just kind of narrows, and you don't have those options anymore. Whether it was intentional or not, you just become the person that you are. And I would say this movie is like filled with that kind of stuff, and so I have a lot of appreciation for it. I'm giving it a 10 out of 10. Semi-Pro is, I honestly think, very underrated Will Ferrell comedy. This is one I would actually really recommend. I feel like, I don't know why people don't like it, or I guess I get the impression that people don't like it as much, but for me, this is a 10 out of 10. This movie is called Crazy. This is a French-Canadian movie. Oh, that's a little loose, actually. I'm going to fix that. Really fantastic family drama. It is actually considered one of the best Canadian movies ever made. So for any Americans watching this, I'm betting you don't even know about this movie, and I would highly recommend you check it out. This is 11 out of 10. Okay, Tokyo Drifter. I don't remember a lot about this one. I watched it a couple times. It's very stylish, I'll tell you that. But since I don't remember it that well, I'm not going to give it a rating. What is this movie called? A Stranger of Mine. This is awesome. This one I do remember. This is a very funny mystery movie, essentially. I guess I don't want to spoil anything. I'm just going to say 10 out of 10. Okay, we're at almost the end of the stack of the Chinatown bootleg movies. Mirabito, horror movie. I think it's pretty good. It's pretty good. This is from the director of Ju-On, which is The Grudge. It's one of his other movies. They did not make an American version of this, but I think I like this one because it gets pretty surreal, and I would say for this one 9 out of 10. Fantastic Planet, René Laloux. I remember when I was younger, sometimes I would just go on YouTube and I would search, trippy animations or trippy cartoons, and clips of this movie would always show up. And so I finally watched the full movie, and I absolutely love it. I mean, I think it's pretty popular now, at least in certain circles. It's become a lot more well-known. But really fantastic sci-fi. I'll go ahead and say this is a 10 out of 10. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I think my feelings about this movie have changed over the years. It really did affect me when this came out. I still really like the movie, but I actually think as I've gotten older and rewatched it, I find this movie to be so depressing. And I think it always was a very depressing movie, but when I was younger, I just didn't catch on to that aspect of the movie as well. And so I actually find this harder to watch now. But I still think it's an excellent movie. I'm saying 10 out of 10. Okay, Planet Earth, the complete series of Planet Earth. And to be honest with you, the only reason I bought this is so I could get high and trip out and watch some cool, nature footage. And I absolutely loved it, okay? I don't really remember a lot about it because I was high the whole time, but I'm going to say 10 out of 10. Okay, Seven Chinese Brothers. Seven Chinese Brothers is a movie that I talked about on this channel. I did a review of it. So again, this is one that I don't really want to repeat myself on too much, but this is really one that I really connect with. It's sometimes you watch a movie and you just see yourself in it so much that it's kind of creepy, or it's kind of uncanny, I guess. That's why I love this movie so much. I really feel a kinship with it, and for me, it's a 12 out of 10. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. This is my favorite Quentin Tarantino movie. There's certain Tarantino movies that I just don't like, and it tends to be the more action-heavy ones. I've never enjoyed Kill Bill, for example, or any of the movies in that series. I really enjoy this one because of its very slow pace. Honestly, I think that's kind of my thing. I think I just like more meditative movies, and this one happens to be, I think, a masterpiece. This is 11 out of 10 for me. Back to the Coen Brothers, No Country for Old Men. Maybe second favorite Coen Brothers movies. I rewatched this last year, enjoyed it just as much as I did, years prior when I watched it. Actually, I think I enjoyed it more just in this past year because I turned on subtitles. And sometimes with these guys, speaking in these like kind of Southern American accents, I think sometimes the dialogue, I didn't pick it up while I watched it in the past. So I think the subtitles helped me to pick up on some of the more, subtle details. Excellent movie. 10 out of 10. Okay, Garden State. When I think of this movie, it's just so attached to a certain time in life for me. And it's such a nostalgic movie for me, and that's why I love it. I also think it is a very beautiful story as well. I'm saying 10 out of 10 with this one. Pineapple Express, pretty good comedy. I don't like later in the movie it becomes kind of an action movie. I don't really like how that side of the movie. The first half of the movie I love. Second half of the movie, not really my thing. 9 out of 10. Ocean's 11, also one that I have a lot of nostalgia for. This used to be a comfort movie back in high school. I would watch this. It just is a movie that everybody in this movie is just so cool. You know what I'm saying? And I wanted to be like these people. I didn't actually want to be a criminal though, but I liked that this wasn't a very realistic look at crime. It was it's very lighthearted, it's very fun look at crime. Very entertaining, very fun, and it was a comfort movie. So a lot of great memories with this one. I would give it a 9 out of 10. Okay, this is another Canadian movie. It's called Nothing. It's directed by Vincenzo Natali, which his popular movie is called Cube. This is the movie I think he made after Cube. It's a comedy about these two guys that they're so sick of their lives. They're being evicted from their place. All this terrible stuff is happening to them, and in a moment of panic and stress, they kind of will away everything. It's kind of like a magical thing that happens. I think what I really liked about this is that it's a Toronto movie. The Dundas Station is in this movie. And I think that was exciting for me. It can be kind of exciting to see your own town in a movie. I do think it's okay. It's okay. I liked it more when I was a kid. But now it is very silly and not quite my sense of humor. I'll give it a 9 out of 10. Little Miss Sunshine is incredible. Amazing family drama. Man. Little Miss Sunshine. This is a movie that really affected me, and there's actually a scene in this movie that makes me cry every single time. I gotta rewatch this sometime soon. It's 11 out of 10. I bought this because I wanted a copy of Leaving Las Vegas, which is the movie that I guess I can talk about more, and I got a copy of Raging Bull, which I don't think I've even seen the full movie. So I can't really comment on Raging Bull, but Leaving Las Vegas is one of my favorite movies depicting alcoholism, drug addiction. Nicolas Cage is amazing in it. Elizabeth Shue as well is an incredible supporting actress for this movie. I've had some drug problems. I've had some alcohol problems. I think for anybody who has experienced addiction in their lives, this is a really good one to watch. It's comforting and also scary. Leaving Las Vegas, 16 out of 10. The Dangerous Lives of Altar Boys. I think this movie is very beautiful, and you get some really interesting performances. Like Jenna Malone is in this, Kieran Culkin, Emile Hirsch, Jodie Foster, what's his name? Vincent D'Onofrio. It's an interesting cast, and they're all pretty young. This is before a lot of these actors actually blew up. And I think for me, I actually did go to a semi-private school, it was all-guys school, wearing uniforms and stuff, and I really related to the main cast. There's basically these four friends. they go to this private school and they're very rebellious, and that was kind of like what I was like, you know. I mean, it is a comedy. It's not really something that I would say is very realistic, but it's very dreamy, you know. If you grow up in this kind of world, these are like, when I watch this, I'm like I wish I was these kids, you know what I mean? Like, this was the dream of who I wanted to be while I was that age. 10 out of 10. So Fight Club, obviously, legendary movie. I think with this one, I don't think there's any reason for me to talk about it too much. I will say, though, that, okay, first of all, love this movie. It's getting a 10 out of 10 for sure. But one thing I will say is that I did rewatch this. I rewatched this maybe a couple years ago, and I felt that it was just a little bit outdated for our culture today, or at least for me personally. I felt like maybe because I had seen this so many times before, and I'd already been exposed to the messaging and all the like when I watched this when I was younger, it blew my mind, and it was all new ideas for me. But now I feel like I've largely outgrown the ideas that come through in this movie, and so I don't feel that there's any reason for me to like go back to this movie ever again, aside from just the sheer entertainment value of it. But it still is definitely one of the greats, and 10 out of 10. Okay, this movie is called Come On, Come On. It is a movie directed by Mike Mills, starring Joaquin Phoenix. I really like Mike Mills movies a lot. He did also 20th Century Women and Beginners. I'm blanking. He has a very humanistic filmmaking style, and that's what I love about his movies. They're really like heartwarming, but also sad all the time. Like, I don't know if I'm explaining it very well, but Come On, Come On, you know, this is actually the movie that Joaquin Phoenix did just after doing Joker. And I think, you know, seeing those movies kind of like back to back just shows you how dynamic this guy is. I think he's definitely, I mean, this is not, you know, a hot take or anything, but I think he's definitely one of the best that's doing it right now. And love this movie. I'm gonna say 10 out of 10. Recess, school's out. I think I bought this at a thrift store, and then I watched it once, and I enjoyed it, but I don't remember anything about it. I will just say that Recess was one of the best cartoons. When I was growing up, after school, watching this show was probably the best one on. Like, there were some really great shows, really great kids cartoons, but I think Recess was really up there. Just based on the cartoon, the show itself, I'm giving this like a 15 out of 10. This movie itself, I would have to rewatch it to actually give it a rating. 2001, Space Odyssey. What I would say about this, there are certain scenes that are just so amazing that just makes this like at least like a 23 out of 10, okay? It is an amazing movie, but I do also think there are some scenes that I can't ignore. I think don't work as well. I think sometimes, you know, culturally we have this has a place in history that you're kind of not allowed to talk about, you know, any of the flaws, or I don't even want to call them flaws. Maybe it's just stuff that I see that I don't like, but I do think some of the anti-gravity stuff just doesn't look very good. And I do understand this is made in the 70s, I think. You know, they couldn't make it work. And, you know, even in the beginning with the apes, and they have the bones, and they're obviously rubber that they're hitting on the floor, you know. And it's like, that should be fine. I have no issue with that, right? But it's things like that. I guess it does make me a little suspect of how highly regarded this movie is, when there are so many little things that I think people just, they want to overlook it just because of the legacy. But that being said, friggin' 23 out of 10. Okay, Identity. Identity is like a pretty good horror movie. This is actually maybe, I don't remember entirely, but this actually might be the first or second DVD that I ever bought. It's just like a good Hollywood entertaining movie. It's nothing special. Maybe that's what I would say. It's nothing special, but I do like it. 9 out of 10 for me. Gus Van Sant's Last Days. Interesting that this is the first. So this is from Gus Van Sant's Death Trilogy, and this one's largely based on
Kurt Cobain. It's not true to life, but it is an imagination of the days leading up to his suicide. And it's a very minimal movie. Michael Pitt is the lead in this. I think he does a great job. A very meditative movie. I really love it. I think this is a fantastic movie. This is the last one in the Death trilogy. I think it's the first one that I saw. But I actually prefer Jerry. Jerry's the first one, and then Elephant, which I think most people know. Actually, I'm not going to talk about the other ones because right now we're just talking about Last Days. Last Days is really good. Probably not for everybody because it is extremely slow and minimal, but I really have a taste for that sort of thing, and I also love Gus Van Sant. This one, 18 out of 10. Okay, Death to Smoochie. One of Robin Williams' most villainous roles. He's a real dirtbag in this movie, which I find pretty entertaining. Edward Norton is also pretty great in this. And this movie is all about corruption within the children's entertainment business. Very, very funny. My friend Eddie introduced me to this movie. My friend Eddie, honestly, he was somebody who was kind of pivotal in my life. I'm not in touch with him anymore. He's just a friend of mine from middle school, I guess. He was really into movies, and I would go over to his house sometimes, and he would just show me the stuff that my parents would never show me. You know what I mean? And this was one of those movies. And I just feel grateful that I had a friend like that. I think, honestly, I have him to thank for my, budding interest in film. And this is one of the movies that got me there. I haven't seen it in a long time, but it's a dark comedy. I love dark comedies, so I'm giving it a 10 out of 10, even though I don't remember it too well. This is a movie called Happiness. This is one I actually picked up on a whim. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. This is a Todd Solondz movie. I loved the artwork on it, and I also just noticed that Philip Seymour Hoffman was in the movie, and so I just bought it. And I got it home, and it's quite a movie. This is one that I've seen online on lists of like some of the most disturbing movies ever made. I probably wouldn't put it on that list, but I think the reason that people find it disturbing is because it's the sexual depravity in this movie that is disturbing. The reason I don't think it's very disturbing is because the sympathy aspect to it, the fact that it's trying to get you to sympathize with these rather unlikable people, actually really worked on me. And I was pretty young when I saw this. And I honestly think it was very helpful for me to like see these characters from a safe distance, It wasn't people that I knew in my real life. I was just exploring it as an observer, and I'm just really glad that I can sympathize with people like this, I mean, maybe that's a weird take, but that's maybe why it's not disturbing to me. I really like this one. I'm very pleased with my intuitive purchase. I'm going to say 11 out of 10 for Happiness. Observe and Report. I'm not going to talk about this one too much because it's whatever. I like it. I don't think it's one that I would recommend to people. I've got a soft spot for it. I like Seth Rogen movies, And I like that they sort of tried to parody movies like Taxi Driver and stuff like that. I don't think it totally works, but I do like it. 9 out of 10. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. This is a drug movie. This is a movie that I was on drugs pretty much every time I have seen it, which means I don't remember it that well. It's a classic movie, very trippy movie. People love it. It's kind of got like a dirty, psychedelic roller coaster kind of feel to it. Yeah, 10 out of 10. The Machinist, Christian Bale, The Machinist. It is a pretty good psychological thriller, from what I remember. And a pretty intense performance from Christian Bale. He lost a lot of weight for this role. Whoops. Struggling to know what to say about it. I think maybe with this one, it's a good psychological thriller. That's what I would say. It's got a lot of it plays with your ideas of what's real and what's not. Yeah, it's a fun ride. It's a fun dark mystery. Some great twists and turns. 9 out of 10 for The Machinist. Halloween. I'm not the biggest fan.
I want to like this movie. I really do. And I do think there is a lot about it that is like pretty awesome. Like even just the visual of Mike Myers in the suburbs, like stalking people. Like it's such a perfect image, such a perfect Halloween kind of image. You know, visually, I think this movie has some awesome parts. I also think the kills in this movie are very interesting. I would describe them as like kind of elegant. There's not a lot of blood and gore. It's kind of just, and they're creative too, like in a way that's not realistic, and it's just interesting. But overall, I can't say that I actually really enjoy watching this movie that much. I'll just give it a 9 out of 10. Probably a sacrilegious take. Robin Williams live on Broadway. I actually think this is not his strongest stand-up special. When I bought this, I thought I was buying a different one. There's another one that I really like. This one's okay. This one's like pretty good for what it is. I don't know. I mean, I'm a huge Robin Williams fan. He's someone that just makes me happy, you know. I'm still happy that I have this. I just feel like this one, he's like pretty manic on stage. I think it was a weaker night for him. That's all I will say. I give it a 9 out of 10. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I feel like this movie, people know about this movie now, I think. When I bought this movie and when I heard about this movie, I think I felt really alone in it. It seemed like people around me just didn't know what it was, but I hear people talking about it now. It's a pretty fun mystery, like thriller kind of movie. Great performances all around. This was my introduction to Robert Downey Jr. and like his charm, you know. And Val Kilmer's also really great in this as well. I will say though that this is a mystery that's pretty hard to figure out by the end. I don't actually know how they wrapped it up, but it's still very entertaining. 9 out of 10 for Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. The Outsiders I watched once, so I don't feel comfortable talking about it, honestly. I gotta watch it again. I'm not gonna talk about this one. Not applicable for score. Glory to the Filmmaker. I think this one was one of his comedies, but I also don't remember it very well. Yeah, I'm trying to search my memory right now. This is maybe another one that I just can't rate right now. I don't remember it. Okay, Suicide Club. This one, I wanted it to be better than it was. I had heard some good things about it. The title itself is what appealed to me. And my friend had told me that he really liked it. But I remember finding it just a little bit silly. I'll just give it a 9 out of 10. Bottle Rocket. This is one of the most adorable movies I've ever seen. I always go back and forth about like what's my favorite Wes Anderson movie, and this one always kind of comes to mind. Like, what a strong way to start your career. This is about just like some small-time criminals. They're just so adorable. I can't really explain it any more than that. 11 out of 10. This is The Wrestler, a Darren Aronofsky movie. Super depressing. I have not seen this in a while. I think the reason I haven't seen it in a while is because it's kind of hard to watch. But this is one that I actually do remember fairly well. It's just this guy that seems to be so bent on self-destruction. And it's hard to see him going through that and sacrificing his relationships to be a wrestler, you know, sacrificing his body. Yeah, very difficult to watch. Not unlike every other Darren Aronofsky films, but I actually think this is probably one of his strongest movies. A lot of Darren Aronofsky is like kind of mixed bag for me, but this one I really love. 10 out of 10 for me. Be Kind, Rewind. I love this movie. I did a review of this movie on this channel. It was actually my first review that I did. It's not a very good video, but I think I still expressed myself well in that video. And 11 out of 10 for Be Kind, Rewind. Itchy the Killer, again, but this is the animation. I'm not sure I even watched this one, so can't rate it. Another Takeshi Kitano movie. This one is just called Takeshi's. And actually, I think this is my favorite one of his that I've seen. He plays himself in this, but in multiple different versions of himself. It's kind of a nonsense movie, you know, which makes it difficult to explain. But that's why I love it. 10 out of 10. This movie's called Terry. I also did a review of this movie on this channel. I love it. I love it. And again, I'm not going to repeat myself. I've already, did the review. Awesome. Love this fucking movie. Probably 12 out of 10. Primer. I guess you might call this a hard sci-fi. I don't know if I'm using that term correctly. It's all about time travel, and it does seem to be like kind of rooted in reality, at least more so than other time travel movies. Also extremely convoluted and hard to follow. But I think that kind of makes it fun. The way that they present it, they just don't explain much, but they explain enough that it makes you really invested, I guess. Just a very smart sci-fi. I love this one. It rocks. 10 out of 10. Insomnia. Another interesting one. I think this was one of my first DVDs that I ever bought. It really moved me when I first saw this movie. And again, I think the only reason I picked it up is because of Robin Williams. At the time, I was just like, if he's in it, I'm going to watch it. You know what I mean? So this is like a thriller. It's a mystery, murder mystery type of story. There's another one I have called 1 Hour Photo, which is kind of a similar thing. I feel like Robin Williams, like he could really play a psychopath. And in this movie, it's kind of like he's playing a psychopath. And I was really surprised by it when I first saw it, that he had that kind of range. And, it's Christopher Nolan. I had no idea. Well, great. I mean, I like this movie. I'll just say 10 out of 10. All right, classic. Saw. I know a lot of people have mixed feelings about the Saw series, but I think it generally, at least from my understanding, we all kind of agree that the first one is the best one. As much as it's also just like an entertaining horror movie, I do find this one to be pretty inspiring because of how low budget it is. Sometimes, at least for me as an artist, I love movies that do amazing things with very little. And it's not like they had no budget, but what I mean is like a lot of this movie does really just take place in one room. It takes place in that sort of torture chamber, and that kind of thing just makes me feel like, maybe I could do that. Maybe I could just, get a room and write a story that takes place in just one room. And also just like, it's just awesome. I love it. 10 out of 10 for Saw. Okay. I think this is going to be the last, whoa. Okay, this is going to be the last pile. Yeah, we'll just do this, but that'll be it. There's a lot more, honestly. But I'm running low on time. We'll do as much as I can. Speed run. American Psycho, amazing. Love this movie. This movie rules. 11 out of 10. Seven Psychopaths. Pretty cool movie. Very stylish. Ensemble cast. Tom Waits is in this. That's kind of cool. Sam Rockwell. It's just a fun movie, Doesn't really leave you with much to think about. It's not really that kind of movie, I guess. 9 out of 10 for me. Half Baked. That's a pretty good one. Dave Chappelle when he was still cool. I mean, he's still cool, I guess. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about him now. Doesn't matter. Half Baked is awesome. I don't smoke weed, but I used to. And when I discovered this movie, I was still smoking weed. And it was still kind of fun at that time. Really fun movie. I give it a 10 out of 10. Igby Goes Down. This is an interesting one, too. This is actually a Kieran Culkin. Kieran Culkin has become a figure right now. People are loving him because of Succession and also because of A Real Pain. I think in hindsight, I've seen this as an adult, and I don't think it's quite as... It's a lot like Catcher in the Rye. It's that kind of coming-of-age story, but it's not even close to as good as something like Catcher in the Rye. But still, especially as a young adult, I loved this one. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. The Lighthouse. Interestingly, I have not seen The Lighthouse. I bought this in a bargain bin because I had heard so many people say that this movie's awesome, But now I've actually seen two other Robert Eggers movies. I've seen Nosferatu and I've seen The Witch. And I think what I've learned is that maybe Robert Eggers is just not for me. Like I do really like his gothic horror style. I think it's awesome. But I really dislike the theatrics, and I really dislike the over-the-top performances and stuff. And from what I understand, The Lighthouse is full of very over-the-top performances. And it makes me not that interested in watching it. I know that people love this stuff, and I'm trying to be open to it, but I also just want to be honest that maybe it's just not for me. But yeah, maybe I'll watch it at some point. But for now, The Lighthouse, can't give it a rating. Beginners, another Mike Mills movie. This one is probably of the Mike Mills movies that I've seen, it's probably my least favorite, actually, but I do really like it. 9 out of 10 for me. Okay, got 2 movies and we wrap it up. Manic. This was a very comforting movie to me growing up. I really liked this one. Even to this day, I think it's a pretty sobering look at these kinds of rehab facilities or whatever this is. And I'd give this a 10 out of 10. Before Sunset, this is my favorite of the Before trilogy, the Linklater one. I'm not going to say speed running it. 11 out of 10. Okay, so that's it, really. I guess I just want to say to wrap this up pretty quickly. I did go a little overtime maybe, but I think that's okay. But thank you for watching. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I didn't quite get through all of the movies. I mean, there's still... Maybe I could show you. There's still like a whole couple of... There's like 3 more piles in there. So maybe I'll do like a part 2 just on my own time or something like that. But you know what? I'm pretty tired right now. I'm pretty tired. Talking about movies, I know it probably doesn't seem like it's that difficult, but it is. It's pretty tired. I'm pretty tired right now. But this is my entry for the Oscars challenge this year. And again, thank you for watching and spending some time with me. And I hope you're doing okay. And that's it. See you later.